Hello and welcome to the Leaders Council podcast with me, Joshua Jackson. This podcast, just like the Leaders Council itself, is all about recognising and celebrating the people who keep this great country running. We exist to give leaders a voice outside of their own organisations and to support them in the same way they support their staff every single day of the week. If you are in a leadership position yourself and would like to have your voice heard on the national stage, please go to leaderscouncil.co.uk/apply. Each week on this programme, I'm joined by a different leadership figure from the world of business, education, politics, sport, or even from local communities, in the aim of truly discovering who those people are that get up every morning and make this country work. We get their take on the current economic and political landscape of the UK and discuss everything from national insurance rises to physical fitness. And of course, the success and the innovation that makes it all worthwhile in the end. On today's programme, I'm delighted to be joined by Tony and Sian Buchanan, co-founders of Absolute Performance. Tony, Sian, welcome onto the show.
Thank you.
No, it's great to have you both here. It's, as I say, it's unusual to be having two people on, but considering you're both co-founders of a great organisation and you've got very different roles within the organisation, that we thought it'd be great to be able to hear from both of you. And given the sort of challenges of the last 18 months, it would be sort of remiss of us not to start on COVID and the business interruption, especially for an organisation that works within the fitness world, providing gym equipment and servicing, providing sort of design platforms and equipment, and having a fantastic blog as well. But Tony is sort of officially titled of managing director. How has everything been?
Good question. I think. As everybody's experienced the 18 months, it's been an interesting time, to say the least. I'll quite happily say that if there was a rule book of what not to do at the start of a global pandemic, we did every single one. Basically, more staff, more stock, new premises, et cetera, et cetera. We were flying as a company. Then all of a sudden we heard about COVID hitting. We thought, well, it's not going to really impact us. But obviously, as the weeks went on and we were digging deeper into our pockets to fund the new premises, like I said, the more staff, more stock, big projects that we had on the go. It became quite eye-opening to begin with. How would it impact us? And really, every day was a different day. Every day was a different story of trying to understand where we could get help, where we could get advice, where we could get additional funding. It was a shock horror to begin with, but gradually we worked our way through it. And so, not trying to give an end to my answer, but we worked our way through it, and we've come out on the side a much better company in my eyes. So yeah, it was an interesting time.
That really does sound like a bit of a challenge. New staff, new premises, more stock. Very much not the position you want to find yourself in, just as a sort of shutdown happens. And Sian, obviously, a lot of what you've been doing is, sort of marketing, getting the message out there for the company over the last, couple of decades, really, and that's your focus before, jumping in and before you both co-founded the organisation. And did you find that, your messaging was there? Were you able to sort of pivot into, new styles of work? And, how did you sort of, get through that initial period?
I think that the first thing that we saw was an instant take-up of consumer sales, which is not an area that we had focused on previously. So we were seeing people buying gym equipment to work out at home, and all of a sudden, we were thrown into this world of picking and packing one kettlebell here, a set of dumbbells there, and getting all this stuff sent out to everybody as fast as possible. So we kind of focused initially on just pushing the web sales and the consumer sales. I guess arguably when it comes to marketing Absolute Performance, we had actually rebranded 2 years. Tony, I can't remember exactly when it was now, 2018 actually, 3 years ago now. And we were still working quite hard to um, place the brand and get ourselves out there as a new sort of look at absolute performance. So it was quite a challenging time to be hit by COVID and to suddenly kind of have the mat pulled from under our feet, to be perfectly honest. But I think we've just stayed very true to ourselves, very true to who we were as a business pre-COVID, and we dug very, very, very deep. And I think going back to some of the things that Tony said, as a business, we dug so deep through COVID. We really, really challenged ourselves, individuals, business owners, to say, are we doing this right? We've got an opportunity here to make sure that we don't come out of this and crumble, because ultimately a lot of businesses will have done that. So we took an opportunity to step back from the business and say, how do we want to be when we come out of COVID? So from a marketing perspective, I would honestly say probably not a huge amount has changed, because we are who we are and who we were before COVID. But I think as a business and how we operate, and what we look like internally, where we operate from, Tony talked about new offices, new premises, we have changed significantly. COVID has driven a lot of that change. COVID has been the instigator, if you like, of regrouping our structure, thinking about, do we need all these people? How can we operate more efficiently? And really reshaping the business.
So with the, it's easy to say now that...
Sorry, Joshua, can I just jump in and add a little bit of additional context, which you may or may not be aware of? About 4 to 5 weeks before COVID became a global issue, we were also hit in South Wales with very heavy flooding. And unfortunately, one of our warehouses was flooded. So we had that additional issue literally just prior to COVID of working that out. And that obviously impacted a little bit on what Sian was saying about the packaging of many different items, whatever. I was also booked on a flight in March to go to Tokyo with the British Olympic Association, the biggest project that we've ever worked on, involving a significant amount of equipment to provide all the training camps for Team GB. Obviously very topical, because obviously the Olympics have just gone ahead. And I got a phone call at 11 o'clock at night telling me not to bother coming. There's issues in Tokyo with COVID, and there could be a grave risk to the Olympics. And all I could think about was we had 8 40-foot containers of equipment packed, ready to go from around the world to Tokyo. So at that point, at 11 o'clock at night, I don't think I've ever been as frightened in my life about the longevity of our business.
I can imagine that was a whole extra level of stress that you very much didn't need amongst everything else that was going on. So that's so far we've got flooding, we've got new staff, new warehouses, COVID just appearing, then COVID impacting on your Olympic preparations, then COVID shutting down the economy in the UK. What an incredible series of unfortunate events that have hit you there, and what a testament to the fact that you're still here, and you're thriving in many respects, and doing such a good job, especially as you say with the Olympics has gone ahead, having fulfilled that that goal and that sort of contract as well. So from me, we've just started. Very well done.
Thank you.
With the sort of benefit of hindsight, you're looking back, were there any decisions that you made that you thought were really good, or equally did you panic a little bit? Was there the moments where you made some rash decisions that you really wish you hadn't rather done in that sort of March to April period?
I would say if you look back, and did we panic? Yes. If I was brutally honest, at first, yes, we did panic. And probably like an awful lot of business owners, I can remember being in Stratford-upon-Avon with friends, having dinner on the weekend before everything shut down. And we were sat there saying, crikey, one person saying, my husband's just lost his job because he's a pilot. Another one saying, I just lost my job because I'm contracting and they just closed my contract off completely. And I'm sitting there thinking, my goodness me, right, well, if I could go back and I can try and fund something through a mortgage holiday, and if we put this money there, and if we do this, then we might be able to keep the business going for a month. It was that kind of conversation, or 2 months, and it was absolutely terrifying. And we did at first panic a little bit, I think, when they announced the furlough scheme. And so, the sleepless nights were slightly sort of less frequent as they had been to the week prior to them announcing the furlough scheme. But we did make some very considered decisions. We had a few members of staff that had handed in notices prior to COVID who said, well, we'd like to stay on now. And we said, sorry, no, that's not in the spirit of the furlough scheme. You've made your decision, and we have to make some tough decisions that you have to go. We're not going to carry you on through certainly a very uncertain period of time. So we can't do that. And I think that we also made some very considered decisions with regard to our sales team. We knew we had to exit COVID whenever exiting COVID has happened or is happening or will happen. We knew that we had to have a strong sales team. And so we'd actually just taken on board a new sales manager for the north of England and Scotland I think he joined us on the 3rd of March. So he didn't fall into the furlough scheme, but we continued to pay him throughout the initial COVID period, the first lockdown. And that was probably one of the best considered decisions that we've made. And when you look back through the fog of all the decision making, the restructuring I've talked about, the decisions to keep certain people on, the decisions to not keep other people on, and in actual fact, like many small business owners, having to make redundancies, never pleasant. When you're a small team of 15 people and suddenly, you've become a team of 11, and you're having to make redundancies to get that. That's tough. It's emotionally tough on all of us. Because it affects everybody in the team, and it makes people feel very uncertain about where they stand. But we did make some good decisions, I believe, now when we look back. And we did panic at the same time. I know that sounds crazy, but I don't think, you'd have to be pretty cool and hard to have not thought, heck, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to our business? There's so much is resting on it. And it was heartbreaking at first because we worked in this for 12, 13 years, and potentially overnight it's gone. But I really feel that when we stepped aside and when we did get some of the financial support that was on offer from the government, then we were able to start really stepping back and saying, this is what we need for our business. And they all laugh at me, and I will use the phrase, we keep saying it, we had to exit COVID leaner, fitter and stronger. And that was our mantra. It's been my mantra for 18 months now, that we have to be leaner, fitter and stronger as a business. And it really made us focus. So in a way, sometimes we look back and we think, aside of all the things that COVID has brought to the nation, it's actually probably been one of the best things that's happened to us as a business. That's
an interesting way that, being able to take that step back and, realise that, certain things had got, a little bit fat, in certain processes in the company. And a lot of business leaders took that, they were able to trim down, make themselves more efficient. But at the same time, a lot of, people have had to change the way that they've dealt with staff. They've had to adapt their own sort of styles of business running, leadership. It's not just the business that's struggling. Sometimes it's the individual leaders that are doing it with all of the pressures, as you say. It's not just for you turning up and taking your wage. It's you're the drivers, both of you, for the business, pushing forwards, making sure that there's a plan and that people can be looked after. And so, Tony, do you think that your leadership style has changed throughout this period? Do you think that there was enough support for you? And could you sort of lean on each other at times?
Yeah, I think to say that no one's been impacted of what's happened in the last 18 months would be lying to themselves. I mean, obviously, we've all had to look at what we're doing, how we're doing it, everything about it. As Sian rightly said, we've stripped everything back within the company. went back to, we put everybody on furlough apart from myself pretty much. I learned a lot about myself in that 3 to 4 months where it's just pretty much me running the company. Obviously with people like Sian in the background helping me out. You do dwell on things and think how you can do things better. We've always been, since day one, I would say we're not your typical entrepreneurs. We don't take many risks. We've funded this pretty much pound by pound ourselves. We have very little outside borrowing. So to all of a sudden have to think about doing paperwork for the government COVID assistance loans or whatever they were called, and other items of support was something that I'd never dreamed of, and something we've always stayed away from because we always felt them quite difficult to. It was not worth my time to go through paperwork to try and get a few £1,000s here and there, but obviously with what was going on with COVID and pretty much the whole of the fitness industry closed down, we had to try and do something to save our business. So we learned a lot of things about the company and more importantly ourselves. I won't lie. It impacted everybody. It impacted me. It impacted my relationship with my wife, Sian. How would it not do? Because from day to day, we're worrying about are we going to have a job? Are we going to have a roof over our head next week or the week after or the week after? But we fought hard. And as Sian said, we've come through leaner, meaner. We've taken probably more advice in the last 12 to 18 months than we have done cumulatively, in the 13 years before that. Some of the advice wasn't great, but a lot of it was. And we've learned a lot of things that we've put into practice for the next coming 5, 10, 15 years.
And, looking
I think, can I just add to that? Sorry.
Carry on.
So, well, I was just going to say, you talk about supporting each other, and Tony and I have a daughter. When COVID first hit, like many other parents, I had a child in year 6 who needed homeschooling, and all of a sudden, you're being thrown into what on earth is happening with our business? Is it going to survive? Like Tony says, trying to tread through the quagmire of information on furlough schemes and C-bill loans, all these things, and at the same time try and be supportive to a child who doesn't know what's happening. This is all quite scary, and we're not at school anymore, and actually I don't like being taught by mummy because she's not very good at teaching. And thankfully I'm not planning on being a teacher, as I know a lot of parents feel. So one thing I would say is, if you could look back and you could say anything about us as leaders, the word resilience has to come out time and time and time again. We have had to be so resilient, and I say that from a business perspective and a personal perspective, because we were also challenged with a number of other things throughout certainly that first 8 months. I won't go into them all, but we really were challenged. So to be resilient was absolutely critical, and somehow we dug deep and we were resilient, and we were supported. So as a business, we look to surround ourselves, because as leaders, I might have a marketing background, Tony has a sales background, I don't have an HR background, I don't necessarily have an operations background. There are so many things you learn as you grow your business. And what we have learned is it's really critical to support ourselves with people and other businesses that can provide the right support at the right time. So we have, HR advice that we buy into monthly and support there. So that's on tap, so it's insured. We feel comfortable, therefore, following the procedures. We have a virtual board of directors to ensure that we don't get carried away and that we get challenged to say, well, why are we doing something? And most importantly, that virtual board of directors was an incredible sounding board throughout the whole of COVID. So that the external consultants that we have used have been absolutely critical in sometimes just saying, you guys are doing a great job, don't forget that, because it's very easy to forget it when it's just the two of you immersed in it day in, day out. So leadership style and who we are has morphed, I think, dramatically in the last 18 months.
I think that's a really interesting point there. It's not something that I'd heard previously of appointing a virtual board of directors. I've had business leaders come on and talk about how they've made sort of, networking groups or, made sure they've had conversations with their partners in their industry and whatnot. But that's a really interesting idea, to be able to have that sounding board without necessarily having them, continuously within the business, still allowing you that free reign. So it's definitely something I'll be passing on to sort of future listeners and people that come on the show. That's a really interesting idea. But when within the industry that you work in, there was a period of open, there was a period of close, there was another period of open, and then over the Christmas period again, gyms were shut down. They were seen as hotbeds of transmission. The leisure centres have struggled. They've gone out of business. Gym chains have been putting themselves into huge amounts of debts over this amount of time. Did you find that you had the partnerships there that you needed from a business perspective? Did people manage to survive around you, or were they all panicking as well?
I think everybody was panicking because whether this is a political or a non-political conversation, obviously COVID was hit and it never hit before. So everybody's learning on a day-to-day basis. Seeing like the rules and regulations were changing every day, or there were new ones coming in, that sort of thing. So we were all trying to understand where we sat exactly in the fitness industry, which is obviously a very large industry. We're fortunate that we call ourselves a project company, as in like we go from one project to the next project, whether that be the Olympics or whether that be a school gym or whatever. A lot of the projects we were working on were long-term projects, and they were never going to go away, and they're still happening now. But obviously, our day-to-day business of a gym that was ready for a refit didn't happen. We have quite a large military military business, should I say, where we do a lot of work with all the bases around the UK, and obviously that sort of stopped for a while. Then they realised they needed to get it done to keep the troops fit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that sort of continued on the background, which was helpful. But we also had to worry about how do we get the stuff there, because with furlough down in install engineers, how do we get the kit to site? So it was an interesting scenario that we had to contact our clients literally on a day-to-day basis. Are you open? If you are open, are you prepared to accept us on the site? If you are prepared to accept us on the site, can you assist us with, accommodation? Because some of the hotels in the area may not be open. So therefore, we've got to worry about where we're going to put the engineers. So sometimes they slept on site, like a military site. Sometimes they had to go long distances there and back in the same day. So we had to adapt every day based on what we were getting the feedback from our clients. Some people were very open to continuing the project. Some people were unsure, like ourselves. Some people flatly refused to say, no, this is on hold until this has all gone away. So it literally was a communication exercise every day, finding out what we needed to do.
I can imagine that so many logistical challenges there, and that's another thing that but both will no doubt have learnt and got more involved with over this course. All the things that you didn't think about because they were previously quite easy and quite simple. But there's something I do want to just go into in a little bit more detail, and it's just happened. We got delayed by a year, and you provided a lot of equipment and specialist equipment, specialist placing for Team GB. And so how did that come about, and what's been the feedback?
I guess I'll pick up this one, but we were obviously very fortunate and proud to have worked with Team GB, or the British Olympic Association, in Rio, and that was a large project coming after the 2012 games in London. So about 2.5 years ago, we were approached by Team GB again to look at the possibility of putting together 3 training sites within Tokyo for the Team GB squad. Preparations camp and another camp, a performance camp, at 3 different venues: a stadium, a school, and a university. Basically, to give them a home from home, so to speak, so the kids carry on training when they're out there, both for the Team GB athletes and the Paralympians. So we were immensely proud that we were awarded that contract. And like I said, it was a significant contract for us, 8 containers worth, a significant amount of money. Obviously, not just the worry about it being cancelled, but obviously when it got cancelled or postponed, we had to worry about where we were going to put all that equipment, because a lot of the equipment was branded with Team GB, and so we couldn't exactly resell it and get it back again. We had to keep it. So we had a logistical nightmare of storing it for well over a year. But fortunately, we got the go-ahead earlier this year that everything was going to go ahead. So we started the preparation machine working again, and we worked very closely this time, a lot more closely than we did at Rio. Literally, we were having conference calls, meetings or virtual meetings with the Team GB staff about how it was going to go ahead. And then obviously we then started getting dates of how to get out there and what we're going to do. We had to supply, obviously our engineers were going to go out there. So we had to think about not just the process of installing the kit, but what was going to be the COVID aspect when we went to Tokyo. What tests did we needed before we went? What tests did we need when we were there? What tests did we need when we got back? What were all the protocols? But yeah, it's literally the last team of engineers came back last weekend. We've had 3 visits out there regarding the initial setup and then the breakdown afterwards, leading up to the end of the Paralympics. The feedback is that it was an unmitigated success, and we're extremely proud of how that came about. And we've become quite close with the people we work with within Team GB, and it was an honour. I mean, yes, it was a business proposition as well, but it was an honour to be doing it. And I think without being too emotional, I think the country probably needed that. I mean, we were such a small part in what happened, but to have such great results and such great performances, it was just, we have to be proud of our very small part of helping with that.
And it was such a great Olympics as well. You say something that people were looking forward to, and that sort of did give everybody something else to focus on, especially after the football results over the summer as well. And looking at both the Olympics and Paralympics medal haul, I'm sure that gym came in very handy. Very much in the results as well. But sort of looking now forwards, a little bit into the future. Let's get out the crystal ball. How are you both sort of seeing things for the next 12 months? Have you got anything through the pipeline that's coming up? Or are you thinking that it's going to be, back to plain sailing, really? Sian, what are your thoughts?
I think from my perspective, I'll let Tony talk about sort of sales and perhaps, that going forward from the sales perspective. Going forward from an operational perspective, we've done a few things, but in particular, we're looking at our sort of company culture now. So I'm looking very hard at how do we make sure that the people we've got stay with us and that we actually drive the best performance out of that team. So how do I make them fitter when I go back to my leaner, fitter, stronger analogy, and what do we need to do? So I'm working very hard at the moment on sort of culture and what do we need to do to drive the right culture within our business, and a culture where our employees are happy to come to work, they enjoy coming to work, and as a result, they stay with us. So that's really key, that we start and ensure that we keep people and the right people within the business. So for us now, having made the decisions that we made about the business and streamlining the business and the headcount, what we want to do now is make sure that, having gone through all that effort, and changing the way that we recruit people, because again, I think that was something we worked really hard on. Are we recruiting the right people in our business? Have we got to rethink that? And now we're saying, how do we make sure we keep them? So we're looking at sort of employee surveys on how happy people are, and we're now also about to enter into something called writing rule book. So we're allowing our employees to help us write the sort of culture rule book that says, this is how we want to treat each other, and this is how we want to be day to day, and this is our commitment to each other. Sounds a little bit, sometimes for some people, a bit like, yeah, whatever. But actually, we've got a great team. We've got a really supportive team. We've got some really positive things happening within our team, and off the back of Tokyo, we're really keen to now keep going very positively. And I'm really excited about what the next 12 months are going to bring to us operationally. I'll hand over to Tony. He can talk about sales and where we go with that off the back of things like BOA. But very much for us at the moment, it's culture, and that drives the culture that then extends externally to our clients. So that's key.
Yeah, I mean, and just to add to, what you said before, you touched on, Joshua, about mental health. We've all been affected. I think we've talked about this before, but we've all been affected by COVID, and we still are. It's still out there, and it's still doing whatever it's going to do. Both myself and Sian would be stupid to say that we fully understand the impact on what that's had with our staff and how they're feeling when we ask them to go away, and how we're feeling when even when we sent the teams out to Japan, who were in a state of emergency out there. Okay, it wasn't quite as bad as over here when you got there, but you were still trying to work out, asking people to go in potentially into harm's way, so to speak. So we have to be very aware of that. And I think what Sian and the HR guys are putting into place with that culture we're setting, I think is really important during and post-COVID. But going forward for the next 12 months, currently our order books are full. We've got to be happy with that. We've got a number of good projects going forward. Some of them just regular projects we've been working on. Some of them have been governed by COVID because people, for example, need more space. They don't want to have 100 people in a small space training. They want to have 100 people in a bigger space training. So the projects might get bigger. So some of the smaller military gyms are now becoming bigger military gyms because of the potential COVID aspect. So that's still impacting what we're doing. But yeah, we're in a good place right now. But after Brexit and then COVID, we're just saying what's next. We want to be prepared for what happens next. But it's looking good right now.
Well, that's.
I'd like to add to that as well. Just one thing if I can, and throughout COVID, one of the things we did do, and we are in the process of doing, which is also something for the next 12 months, is we've created a sister company to Absolute Performance called the Absolute Performance Pod. So our old location, we have turned into effectively sort of a COVID-friendly gym, and it's 4 mini gyms. So each little gym is fully equipped, rack, bars, weights, plates, dumbbells, kettlebells, whatever is needed to work out, and each one is rentable by the hour, and so all the equipment is spread out. You're 2 meters away from the other pods, so you can train COVID safely. PTs can come in and train their clients. We've also created rooms upstairs in the old offices where people can do beauty treatments, therapy treatments, and all these are spaces that are rentable safely by the hour, day, week, whatever. So that's a diversification for us that's come through COVID. And I go back to sort of saying to you, sometimes we look back and think COVID's probably one of the best things that happened to us, because it's given us the strength in a way to branch out and do something a little bit different. So that's also going to be a focus for us for the next 12 months. So getting that off the ground and getting that ticking over as a subsidiary business almost.
So let me get this straight. We all started this conversation by talking about how COVID came about, and we went back a little bit from there. And you've had floods, new staff, larger warehousing, COVID hitting, business interruption, gyms opened, gyms closed. That's the problems. They're the issues that you've managed to get through, and they're the things that you've come out of the other side, as you say, fitter, stronger, leaner. And now at the end of it, you're changing company culture, style, planning ahead for the next 12 months, opened up a sister business during this time. This is incredible leadership. It's incredible business running. It is seeing opportunities where opportunities shouldn't exist. It's seeing the areas that business leaders can do to create new jobs, to help their community, to help people to live a better life. And this has been an absolutely fantastic interview, hearing from both of you. Tony, Sian, you are an absolute it's a bunch of passionate people and some real, shining stars in this industry. I was looking forward to this interview, and it very much hasn't disappointed. I just want to say thank you ever so much for coming on, and it would be great to have you on in 6 months or 3 months just to hear how it's all changed again, and you've opened up XYZ opportunities as well.
Nice. I look forward to it. Thank you very much indeed. It's been a pleasure from our perspective as well, and it's been a good opportunity to look back. And actually, sometimes it's hard to look out, but actually sometimes it is nice to say, yes, actually, you know what, it hasn't been as bad as we all sometimes think it might have been.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Sian. That was Tony and Sian Buchanan, co-directors at Absolute Performance. A great interview looking at some of the challenges and opportunities that have been faced by those in the fitness industry over the last 18 months. I wish them all well going forwards now that there's a return back to normality. And to our listeners, thank you very much for tuning into this week's episode of the Leaders Council podcast. I very much look forward to hearing your responses to our guest next week.